Most people think coffee begins in a bag, a jar, or a cafe. But coffee starts much earlier than that. It starts on a tree, inside a red fruit, often on a hillside far from the place where it will finally be brewed. By the time coffee reaches your kitchen, it has already passed through farms, workers, drying patios, mills, warehouses, ports, ships, roasters, grinders, and brewers. What looks like one simple drink is actually one of the longest everyday product journeys in the world. Coffee grows best in a narrow band around the equator, sometimes called the coffee belt. These regions offer the mild temperatures, regular rainfall, rich soil, and shaded conditions that coffee trees prefer. The coffee you drink might come from Latin America, Africa, or Asia, but the basic story is the same everywhere. A coffee tree is planted, cared for, and slowly grown until it begins producing cherries. And that part alone takes time, because coffee trees usually need around 3 to 4 years before they bear fruit. That is the first reason coffee is not a simple product. Even before harvesting starts, there is already a long wait. Farmers are not making a drink. They are managing a crop that depends on climate, soil, altitude, rainfall, labor, and timing. If the weather is too dry, too wet, too hot, or too cold, the final cup can change. So when people talk about coffee flavor, they often focus on roasting or brewing, but the truth is that flavor begins on the farm long before heat ever touches the bean. When the cherries are ripe, harvest begins. In many coffee-growing regions, this is still done by hand, which is slow and labor-intensive. Some farms strip pick, meaning they remove all cherries from a branch at once. Others selectively pick, which means workers return again and again, choosing only the ripe cherries every several days. That second method takes more time and more money, but it can lead to better quality because the harvest is more consistent. In flatter regions and on larger farms, machines may also be used, especially where large-scale farming makes handpicking less practical. After picking, the clock starts moving fast. Coffee cherries cannot just sit around for days because they can spoil. That is why the next stage, processing, matters so much. This is the moment when the fruit around the seed is removed and the future flavor of the coffee starts becoming more defined. In simple terms, processing answers one big question: how do you get from a fresh fruit to a stable green bean that can survive storage, shipping, roasting, and brewing? One of the oldest methods is the natural process, also called the dry method. In this system, the whole cherry is laid out to dry in the sun. Workers keep turning it so it dries evenly and does not spoil. This can take weeks, and the cherries are dried until their moisture drops to about 11%. Then the dried outer layers are removed. Because the bean dries inside the fruit, natural coffees often taste sweeter, heavier, fruitier, or more fermented. That can be a good thing when it is done well, but it can also become messy or inconsistent if the harvest includes too many unripe cherries. Another common method is the washed process, also called the wet method. Here, the fruit is removed much earlier. The cherries are pulped, the beans are sorted, and then the sticky layer called mucilage is broken down, often through fermentation in water tanks. That stage can take roughly 12 to 48 hours. After that, the beans are rinsed and dried, again down to around 11% moisture. Washed coffees are often described as cleaner, brighter, and more focused because less fruit remains around the bean during drying. This is one reason two coffees from the same country can taste very different before the roast even begins. There is also a middle path called honey process or semi-washed processing. In this method, the skin and pulp are removed, but some mucilage is left on the bean while it dries. That remaining sugary layer can increase sweetness and create a profile that sits somewhere between washed and natural coffee. In other words, coffee processing is not just factory handling. It is one of the biggest flavor decisions in the entire journey. What happens right after harvest can shape body, sweetness, acidity, and clarity months later in someone else's cup. Once the coffee is dry, it usually moves into milling, sorting, and grading. This part gets less attention, but it matters because buyers want stable quality. At this stage, coffee may be hulled, cleaned, sorted by weight and size, checked for defects, and sometimes evaluated through cupping, which is a structured tasting process. In many systems, grading can involve screen size, defect count, preparation method, and cup quality. This stage helps decide where the coffee will be sold, how much it will cost, and what kind of customer will buy it. A more carefully sorted lot may go to a specialty roaster, while lower grades may head somewhere else entirely. Then comes shipping, and this is where coffee starts acting less like a local crop and more like a global product. Most coffee is exported as raw green coffee, not roasted coffee. That means the beans often leave producing countries in a stable, unroasted form and travel to consuming countries where they will be roasted, packaged, marketed, and sold. According to the International Trade Center, the coffee value chain can be understood in 5 big stages: production, processing, trade, roasting, and marketing. So the coffee in one morning cup may cross multiple borders before it ever reaches a grinder. This part also helps explain why coffee prices can feel confusing. A cup that costs a few dollars in one place might sit on top of farming risk, transport costs, labor, defects, exchange rates, weather damage, port delays, and roasting losses. Coffee is not just grown. It is moved, protected, checked, bought, sold, blended, and positioned in a market. That is part of why coffee feels ordinary to the drinker but complicated to the system behind it. Even something as simple as shipping beans green instead of roasted changes shelf life, flexibility, and where value is added. After all that, the beans finally arrive at a roaster. This is the stage most people associate with the smell of coffee, because roasting is what turns hard, grassy green beans into the brown aromatic beans people recognize. During roasting, the beans are heated to high internal temperatures, often above 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then cooled quickly. Moisture drops, the beans lose weight, and the flavors locked inside begin to open up. Lighter roasts tend to preserve more of the bean's original character, while darker roasts push further into bitterness, smoke, and roast-driven flavor. This means roasting is not just cooking. It is translation. The roaster is taking everything that happened earlier, the farm, the variety, the harvest, the process, the drying, the grading, and deciding how much of it should still be visible in the cup. Roast too lightly in a coffee may feel underdeveloped. Roast too dark and the original character may disappear. So even at this late stage, the coffee can still be pushed in different directions. One green coffee can become several different experiences depending on the roaster's choices. Then we get to grinding, which looks small but has a huge effect. Grind size changes how fast water can pull flavor from coffee. As a general rule, shorter brew times need finer grinds, and longer brew times need coarser grinds. That is why espresso uses a fine grind, while cold brew usually uses a coarse grind. If the grind is wrong, even great coffee can taste weak, sour, harsh, or muddy. So by the time you grind coffee, you are not starting the journey. You are handling the final step in a chain of decisions that has already been building for months. Brewing is the last transformation. This is the moment where water meets the roasted and ground coffee and turns stored potential into an actual drink. But brewing is still full of choices. Different methods like drip, pour over, espresso, French press, and cold brew change the result. Filter shape matters. Contact time matters. Water matters. Even simple home drip coffee works best when the ratio and timing are right. So the taste in the mug is never just about the bean. It is also about the method used to unlock it. That is really the hidden story behind coffee. It is not just a drink. It is farming, weather, labor, biology, chemistry, logistics, manufacturing, and everyday habit all packed into one routine. The cherry has to grow. The fruit has to be picked. The seed has to be processed, dried, sorted, shipped, roasted, ground, and brewed. Miss one step, and the final result changes. Do each step well, and a simple cup can carry sweetness, bitterness, acidity, aroma, history, and an entire supply chain in one sip. So the next time coffee feels ordinary, it is worth remembering that it is one of the best examples of an everyday object hiding a global story. It reaches your mug looking simple, but it only gets there through time, skill, and a long line of decisions made by people you will probably never meet. And that is what makes coffee more than a morning routine. It is an entire journey you can drink.